Hello, my friends. Hello, it's Matthew Street, and welcome to my channel. As always, I truly appreciate you being here. And folks, oh my goodness, I can't stop thinking about 1974. I did a video not too long ago. Please go check it out, where I showed some milestone albums that were released 50 years ago this year, half a century. I'm still blown away by it. Because, folks, 1974 for me, I don't know about you, for many of you, 1974 was, you weren't around then. You didn't exist. You weren't on the planet yet. But I was. And many of my friends out there, I know you were too, right along with me. In 1974, wow, what a year. One of those years you look back with fondness, for me anyway, or at people maybe in my age category, because in 1974, I was just starting 8th grade that fall of 74. So I was going to be graduating 8th grade in the spring of 75. And after that, I'd be moving on to high school and life and the military and wife and career. And here I am now with grandkids. Where did the time go? But folks, that was a special, special year, 1974. I had turned 13 years old just before the summer. I was loving the Beatles big time. I mean, I was really getting into the Beatles, and my dad was, picking me up albums, and I was purchasing albums by this point with my little paper route money and building the collection. I wasn't quite there yet, but I was building that Beatles collection up, getting everything I could. And I was into the pop hits of the times. I mean, certainly in the 60s when I was younger, but by the early 70s, coming into 74, wow. I think back to Terry Jackson, Seasons in the Sun, and that takes me right back to that year. And Come and Get Your Love by Redbone. Who knows that one? And wow, the big one was, I remember doing a line dance at an 8th grade dance in the little cafeteria to the Locomotion cover by Grand Funk Railroad. I love that cover, and I remember having, you get to put your hands on the hips of the girl in front of you as you were doing the little bunny hop train to the Locomotion or whatever, and getting a thrill out of that, Oh man, or the novelty hits that were around in that period of time. 1974, the big one for me was The Streak by Ray Stevens. Wow. Benny and the Jets by Elton John. Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede. Oh, Band on the Run, of course, was big with Paul, coming late 73 into the whole part of 74 with Band on the Run, Jet, Hell and Wheels, and all that. We were all into that stuff big time. Annie's Song by John Denver. Let Me Be There by Olivia Newton-John, and I Honestly Love You by Olivia. Big that year. Ringo was big that year with Oh My, You're 16. He was really pumping them out in early 74. Wow. Later in the year was Snookeroo and the No No Song and all that. Ringo had all the hits back then. Rock Me Gently by Andy Kim. Who remembers that one? Oh, my goodness. Nothing from Billy Preston was big around that period. Smoking in the Boys' Room by Brownsville Station. The Night Chicago Died, Paper Lace. Waterloo, ABBA's, one of ABBA's first big hits. The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, one of their final big hits, but one of their best ever. Taking Care of Business by Bachman Turner Overdrive. Oh man, I was so into that. Radar Love by Golden Earring. Beach Baby by First Class. Oh my goodness, what a big, big song that was for me. Todd Rundgren, Hello, It's Me. Anybody? And The Joy of the Beach Boys' Endless Summer compilation. Anyone was so into Endless Summer. That album to this day resonates with me and takes me right back to that period of 1974. But folks, for me, Matthew Street, the oddball, who was the oddball with me, I had another album and another song that I loved that year that I was so into it just as much as everything else, as I just mentioned, and more. And I couldn't understand why I was one of the only ones in my own little sad life that loved this band, loved this album, loved their big first hit single off this song, and no one else was really into it as much as me. And I didn't understand it. And it was this album right here. Folks, September 16th, 1974, Raspberries released their greatest album ever. One of the best top 5 albums of 1974 right here. One of the best top 5 power pop albums of all time, right here. Could be one of the best in my world, one of the top 25 albums of all time, right here. Starting Over by the Raspberries. September 16th release date, 1974. And it only got up to 143 on the Billboard charts. Where is the justice in this world? That's a sin, a travesty. Now, it was released on Capitol. I'll show you that quick. I'm just going to talk about this great classic album for a little bit on the Orange Capitol label of the Times. That's what it came out on, Orange Capitol. It was their 4th and final studio album. And I don't know if they knew it at the time, but wow, folks. And the first single off this was called Overnight Sensation, parentheses, hit record. One of the greatest pop masterpieces of all time. And it only made, at least it made the top 100. At least it made the top 40. It made the top 20, but only number 18 on the charts, folks. Overnight Sensation hit record is one of the greatest songs ever made, in my opinion. Do you agree with me? I think so. Sorry, it's one of the greatest. And then they had a second single off this album called Cruisin' Music, which didn't even chart. Didn't even make the Hot 100. And it's a great, great song. Now, what I love about this album is some of the background about it. It was recorded at the record plant in New York City. And while it was being recorded by the Raspberries, John Lennon was in the next studio over recording Harry Nilsson's Pussycats album. John was producing it. And there is rumor, and strong rumor, that John was present for a lot of the recording of Starting Over. He was into this band and into this album big time, as you'll see from my thumbnail. Check it out. John loved this band. He loved what they were doing with this album. There's rumors that he even helped with some of the mixing of this album later on. He helped mix Starting Over. Again, not confirmed. There's no, we don't have proof. He's not credited on the album with doing any of that. But the rumor is, speaking with members of the Raspberries who met John, hung out with John, had fun with John during the recording of this album, that John Lennon did help with the mixing of it. So that's something to think about, put in your back pocket. Produced by Jimmy Ienner. He was a longtime producer of Raspberries, and he did a fabulous job producing their records. Absolutely a wonderful job by Jimmy. And the Raspberries, you can read interviews with them. They had so much fun with John Lennon during the period of recording this album. There was a poster of the Raspberries up in the studio, and John went in with a Sharpie. Well, if there was Sharpies back then. When he went in with a black magic marker, and he started making faces on all the Raspberries pictures, drawing mustaches and little glasses and devil horns on them and stuff. John had a fun time with it, and one of the members, Scott McCarl, the bass player, lead singer, songwriter of the Raspberries, said, "A shame I didn't save that poster. I didn't take it down and save it. He doesn't know what happened to it." But they had a good relationship with John. John really liked what they were doing. It just was a great period for this band to be involved, at the record plant in New York City. And this album, out of their 4 studio albums, has a more aggressive rock and roll sound to it, but it's still classic Raspberries pop, power pop Raspberries, tenders. There's some tender ballads on here. You got Eric Carmen, the great Eric Carmen, right here. Also lead singer, songwriter, guitar player, pianist, keyboardist. You got Wally Bryson, lead guitar, lead vocal, songwriter, right? You got Mike McBride here on drums. And, of course, the great Scott McCarl on bass, vocal, songwriting. Great, great lineup. Max Weinberg himself has cited Michael's drumming on this album as being a major influence on him. He loved Mike's drumming on this album. Max Weinberg, Bruce Springsteen, E Street Band, anybody? So many critics and so many celebrities have come out and praised this band and this album for being a classic. You got, as being a favorite of theirs. Tom Petty loves this band, loves this album. Axl Rose, of course, John Lennon, Paul Stanley from Kiss. Bruce Springsteen has cited the Raspberries as being one of the greatest power pop rock and roll bands of all time. Eric Carmen, they broke up after this album, folks. They went out on tour. They played at a place not far from me, actually, only a few miles from me, at a local high school here in the large gymnasium. I didn't know it at the time. This is late 74, early 75. 13-year-old Matt Street didn't have the sense of mind or presence of mind to know that that was happening. There was no internet then. I could have seen the Raspberries at their peak. I didn't. Oh, I still kick myself. But after they broke up, many, many decades went by. Of course, we know Eric Carmen. He went on to have numerous smash hits, songwriting in on his own. But then again, they did get back together. Between 2004 and 2007, there was a reunion of the original members. They did get back together, and they did a couple of live recordings. There's some live DVD you can get. There's a couple of live albums you can pick up, but it only lasted 3 years, and by 2007, that was over. I never got to see that reunion. The closest they came to me was New York City. I was hoping they would come to Boston. They didn't, and I couldn't get to the New York City shows, so shame on me. Later on, about 7 years after that, 2014, 10 years ago, Guardians of the Galaxy brought some prominence back to the Raspberries with using Go All the Way, their first top 10 smash on one of the Guardians album soundtracks, and it brought a whole new resurgence for the Raspberries. And like I said, the last release from them was in 2017. They released a live album called Pop Art Live. I've talked about it on my channel. It's a great live album from the reunion tour. I highly recommend it. But folks, I want to give some love to this album right here, Starting Over. 50 years old. If you can get yourself a copy, folks, I would highly recommend it. You got a poster with it of the Raspberries, came with it. This album is absolutely stunning. It's breathtaking in its glory. And if you don't have it, shame on you. I mean, I understand if you all missed it the first time around and you weren't back with me, 13-year-old Matt Street back then, touting this band and trying to get other kids to get into it. It just didn't happen for them, and that's why they ended up breaking up. It just didn't happen, and it should have. This should have been a #1 smash. The singles from this album should have been top 10 smashes. Didn't happen, but now they're getting respect. Now people are recognizing the Raspberries for their greatness. And I encourage you, if you've never gotten into them yet, get their best of CD or album. Get some of the one of the live recordings. Pop Art Live or Live on the Sunset Strip is another live album you can get, or on CD. Or get Starting Over. Get any of their four studio albums. Folks, this band is absolutely worth it and great. And if you don't have anything by them, what are you doing here then? Because if you say you love power pop and you say you love rock and roll, then you have to have the Raspberries. You have to, okay? All right, I'm being fresh, but you know what I'm saying? Get out there, get some. Get into it, folks. All right? Fabulous. That's it for me. 50 years old, and I'm giving it some love. I'm giving it love, 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 baby. Raspberries Starting Over. Get it. Please come back here and tell me what you think of it. Say, Matt, I picked up the Raspberries Starting Over. Matt, thank you. I love it. Love you all. Bye-bye.